dead in train crash at Wembley, many injured. Mrs. Thatcher faces conference criticism on unemployment from the floor and the cabinet. Mr. Scargill accepts the ACAS peace plan. It's now up to the coal board. And the first American woman to walk in space. Good evening. At least 6 people have been killed and 60 injured in a crash between a commuter train and a goods train in London tonight. It happened when the 5:54 passenger train from Euston to Bletchley was in collision with a goods train travelling from Willesden to Holyhead, just south of Wembley Central Station. About 10 people are believed to be still trapped in the wreckage. Valerie Jones is at the scene.
The train was packed with London commuters on their way home and was about to pass through the station at around 70 miles an hour when the driver suddenly put on his emergency brakes. Within seconds, the train had hit a freight train pulling out of a goods yard. The first 2 carriages of the passenger train turned over on their sides and slid about 200 yards, ripping up the track and overhead cables. 5 more coaches overturned and the freight train was cut in 2. Richard Hope, a railway journalist and former British Rail employee, was in the last coach, the only one to stay upright. And he was worried about another danger.
Well, my first thought was that the great danger lay in the fact that our train had turned over onto 2 tracks which are used by 100-mile-an-hour expresses, and at this time of the evening they run every 4 or 5 minutes. So I got out and ran back to the rear cab for a device known as a track circuit clip, which I then put on one of the fast tracks to stop trains coming. That is a device which puts the signals to danger. But I think, in fact, the track had been so badly damaged that the signals almost certainly were at danger. What I can say is that we were most extraordinarily fortunate that at the instant that our train turned over, an express train wasn't either passing or just approaching the scene of the accident.
Tonight, firemen were still working to cut through the wreckage to see if any more passengers are trapped. A police helicopter hovered overhead to provide light as they worked on.
Scotland Yard has...
Shower train crash, 6 dead, 18 injured. Walker's warning, there's no profit in a divided country. The ACAS peace plan, Scargill says yes, McGregor will sleep on it, making up Americans' minds on the age of their president, and rescuing the cat that got the wrong signals from its whiskers. Good evening. At least 6 people died and 18 were injured when a packed commuter train crashed into a freight train at Wembley Central in London tonight. Hundreds more commuters escaped unharmed. The 5:54 from Euston to Bletchley hit the side of the freight train, which was travelling from Willesden to Holyhead. Some of the coaches toppled on their sides, and many of the passengers got out by climbing through the windows.
In the nighttime chaos, it's been impossible to piece together what did go wrong. But British Rail and eyewitnesses confirmed that 10 minutes after the 5:54 Euston to Bletchley passenger train set off, it smashed into the side of a freight train, which appears to have veered across the main line outside Wembley Station. The passenger train, which is approaching top speed, buckled and the first 2 carriages toppled over, slewing debris across nearby express lines. Rescuers are still searching for anyone who might be trapped. Meanwhile, survivors have been describing what happened.
I was riding in the rear coach of the 1754 train out of Euston. We were travelling at about 75 miles an hour, the normal speed, when suddenly the driver applied the brakes in emergency. A few moments later, perhaps 3 or 4 seconds, the coach surged slowed right down, and I knew that we had hit something or come off the rails. The coach shuddered to a halt fairly quickly, and as it did so, we came into contact with a freight train alongside, which ground along the side of our coach. As soon as the coach stopped, I looked out of the window and discovered the front part of the train had fallen over onto the fast tracks out of Euston. This presented extreme danger because at this time of the evening, those fast tracks are used by 100-mile-an-hour expresses, which pass every 5 or 6 minutes. And there was great danger that such a train would collide into ours. My first thought, therefore, was to try and stop those trains. I went to the rear driving cab and got the device called a track circuit clip and put that down on the track to put the signals to danger. I then ran to the nearest signal and telephoned the signal box and told them what had happened.
I think it was a freight train with container trucks or whatever, and it just like smacked into the side. I was like, saw the freight train hitting us, and all of a sudden the carriage I was in went over sideways, and it was like, you know, it was just careering along sideways, and it came to a stop, and there was smoke and everything everywhere. People started screaming, and people were just getting up and trying to get out.
What happened to you? Were you hurt?
Well, I mean, I was like smashed against the window, and that was a guy underneath me who like went out from underneath. He was going out of the window, and I was like trying to hold him, stop him going out, but he just went.
Were many people hurt?
Well, I think there were definitely 2 guys dead. I mean,
Dozens of injured commuters were ferried to the nearby Central Middlesex Hospital, though most were suffering from superficial injuries and shock. Nevertheless, casualty staff are on standby tonight in case anyone else is found at the scene of the...
Wreckage from the commuter train and the Freightliner still lay across the main line at Wembley today, and intercity trains were being diverted to other London stations. Whether it was human error or technical failure that caused last night's collision after the goods train had crossed onto the track of the passenger train was not clear. British Rail's sophisticated movement control system is meant to ensure that trains operate to strict timetables. In theory, such an accident should not happen. All day, recovery gangs were striving to hoist wagons and coaches onto emergency bogies so that the line could be cleared.
Worked at the scene of the crash. Their first grim task to free 2 people still trapped in the wreckage. Firemen used welding equipment, cutting gear and hydraulic jacks to get the front carriages lifted upright. By 2 o'clock this morning, the 2 bodies had been recovered. Later, the section of the freight train still intact was moved further up the line. As dawn broke, the extent of the damage became clear. 8 passenger train carriages and 5 freight containers had been derailed. The passenger train lay zigzagged across the track, every door flung open. Experts were examining overhead and trackside signalling for possible faults. The passenger train was not due to stop at Wembley, and one theory is that the driver of that train failed to stop at a red light. The Department of Transport will decide whether or not a full independent investigation is necessary. Joan Thurkettle, News at 10, Wembley.